Hello and welcome to today's episode of Chronicles of a Nigerian Woman. My name is Fagbeja and today I'll be reading Abiola's story. Life can be so strange. You do things right but still don't get the results you hope for. Sometimes it seems as though some of us are destined to be unhappy. I was a regular middle-class girl, born into a family of 5, my parents and 3 children. I was never quiet or shy, and I made friends easily. As I got into my teens, I started to crave male attention like many of my girlfriends, but I realized that though I had many male friends, no one ever asked me out or gave me the kind of attention I was looking for. In university, I got into a couple of relationships that didn't last, but nothing serious. I was always the life of the party, and people liked being in my company, but there were never any strings attached. As I entered my 30s and my friends started to get married, it seemed hopeless. Some friends set me up on dates, but nothing lasted long. My jovial personality belied the fact that I was starting to feel desperate. By the time I was 35, I was all but giving up hope. Everything else in my life was working out. I worked in a large multinational where I started as a management trainee and had risen through the ranks to become a senior manager. I had moved out of my parents' house into a comfortable apartment which I was paying a mortgage for, and my level at work came with a brand new car. I was also able to take international vacations once a year when I had the time. I had been advised several times, of course, that my success was intimidating to men, but I reasoned that I didn't need to hold back on living just because I wasn't married. It was a few days before my 36th birthday when I met Sheson. I remember so well because I was contemplating on celebrating yet another birthday as a single girl. He seemed like the answer to my prayers. He was so good looking, I couldn't believe my luck. He was well spoken, with a hint of a foreign accent, articulate, and he seemed really nice. It was a Saturday, and I went out for lunch as I usually did. I sat at my corner table reading a book when he walked over and asked if he could join me. Before long, we were chatting like old friends, and that was the beginning of our whirlwind romance. He traveled often for work, so we did long conversations over the phone in the evenings, and at weekends when he was around, we would spend time together at restaurants or shopping. He was 38. I was surprised that he wasn't married, but he told me he had been married briefly, but that they were divorced in less than 2 years. He was an only child, and his parents had never been married, and they lived abroad. He said that he barely spoke with his father, and his mom was now remarried. I went to his apartment a couple of times, and I met one of his cousins. The whole relationship barely lasted 6 months before he asked me to marry him. My head was in the clouds. He came with his aunt and uncle to see my parents, and preparations started. I spoke to his mom on the phone in the build-up to the wedding, but I found it odd that his family wasn't more involved in the process. He explained that his mom had brought him back to Nigeria to live with his aunt since he was 9, and so his aunt and uncle were more like his parents. We didn't want a loud wedding anyway, so it made things easy to plan. I was the last of 3 girls, so my parents were happy enough with the fact that I was getting married, and they let me do things my way. We planned for only 50 guests. The wedding went well, but his mom couldn't make it as she couldn't get time off work. We had agreed that since his apartment was rented, he would give it up and move into my place, which was a 3-bedroom house anyway. We went for a 2-week honeymoon and I came back pregnant. About 7 months after we got married, I was at work on a Tuesday when I got called about a visitor at the gate. Sheson was away for work, so I wondered who it was. When I got to the reception, it was a well-spoken but simple-looking woman. She asked that we speak outside, and when we stepped out, she showed me a picture of Sheson, asking if I knew him. I answered that he was my husband. My heart was pounding because I was afraid that something had happened to him. She looked at me incredulously before saying that she was his wife and that his name was Abiola. She showed me wedding photos from 5 years earlier. I told her she had to be mistaken, but she asked me if he was at home. I told her he traveled for work outside Lagos. She smiled and told me he was in Ibadan. She brought out her phone and showed me his name and number. My head was spinning already, but I saw that it was the same number I had. She called him and put it on speaker. She greeted him briefly before handing the phone to me. I took it and weakly called Sheson. He was shocked to hear my voice and he called my name as if to confirm. I answered him and then he ended the call. I looked at Remy, the other woman, as I mumbled through my tears that I had no idea. She had guessed as much and she tried to console me. She took me to her car and I saw their 2 children. I felt as though my life had ended. To this day, I can't explain how I got through the next few months. I took time off work and added to my maternity leave, I was somehow able to pick up the pieces of my life. I found out that the apartment I went to belonged to his friend and that there was no aunt or uncle. He had paid people to play their role. He deceived me well. My daughter is 10 years old now, and I have not been able to bring myself to trust another man. What are your thoughts about Abiola's story? Please share in the comment section. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos.